Hi, I am Finn Bell, a poet, podcaster, and blogger from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I am thrilled to welcome you to the premiere episode of the Poets Lighthouse. Today, we have the pleasure of having our guest join us, poet and teacher Eric Kinsay Valles. Eric is the author of poetry collections such as A World in Transit and After the Fall, Dirges Among the Ruins, as well as co-editor of Get Lucky, an anthology of Singapore and Philippine writings. SG Poems 2015, 2016, Anima Methodi, and The Nature of Poetry. His poetry has been featured in Southeast Asian Review of English and Routledge New Writing. He is the director of Poetry Festival of Singapore and winner of the Go Sin Tab Creative Writing Prize. Hello, Eric. Thank you
Good
so
morning,
much for
Finn
joining
Bell.
us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be part of your very exciting new program, Finn Bell.
Absolutely. So, getting right in, I just have to tell you, I've spent this week enjoying and consuming your videos, your writing, and I have to say, I was very mesmerized. Primarily by my very first impression was reading about a form of poetry that I had not actually ever heard of before, and I've heard about a lot of Southeast Asian ones. And so this is the Anima Methodi. I am to understand that is this is a structure that's 16 lined, and it has two stanzas, 8 lines each.
Hmm.
I found some examples of it that you provided me online, and those examples were superb and wonderful. But can you tell us a little bit more about this form?
Yeah, sure, Finn Bell. So the Anima Methodi or Methodai, as you say it, is part of a new poetic ferment here in Singapore and Southeast Asia. Perhaps because of increased awareness of poetry as a literary genre,
Mhm.
and also people are more willing to buy poetry books, and the government in Singapore especially has been very supportive. Yeah, so it has actually funded a lot of poetry anthologies, including the Anima Methodi. Some other Singaporean and Southeast Asian forms that are gaining following lately are the Asing Ball, which is a
Mhm.
very short poetic form that Desmond Kun, with whom I co-conceived the Anima Methodi.
Mhm.
And then there's this Twin Cinema, which is an earlier form. And I was telling you yesterday that it consists of two parallel um, you have verses that are broken up into two parallel columns,
Mhm.
and that poem can be read either vertically or horizontally, depending on the reader's disposition at the
Oh,
moment.
wonderful.
And
So
there,
sort of like a
yes,
contrapuntal, but it has the additional possibility of interpreting it a different way as well.
yeah, that's right. And there are also more traditional Southeast Asian poetic forms that
Mhm.
um, people are using more of these days, such as the pantun, and some other Malay forms whose names escape me at the moment. And the Anima Methodi, as I was telling you, is based on the Ottava Rima of Dante,
Oh, okay.
except that um, there are two of them in a particular poem. And this can be seen as a poetic representation of Gabriel Marcel's primary and secondary reflections. Marcel was an existentialist philosopher um, who published in the 60s, along with the other great existentialists. And Marcel was saying that we perceive reality through two means of contemplation. The primary reflection, which is for us to look at an experience or a concept based on what we perceive through our senses. And similarly, the anima methodi is based on imagery,
Mm-hmm.
right? Perceptions that we have. And just like in reality, there is repetition of that
Mm-hmm.
image. And Gabriel Marcel would also posit a secondary reflection, which is beyond the realm of the senses. So we actually try to go deep into the experience or the issue at hand, and we look for the essence of that experience or reality. I was telling you that if you look at the Grenfell Tower um, experience from 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
you could have plenty of smoke, dead bodies
Yeah.
lining up to that gutted building. Um, that would be um, the raw materials that you could use for the primary reflection in the first octave
Mm-hmm.
of the anima metodi. But then, after careful reconsideration, which involves repetition, mulling over and over the images that we have of that experience, we can
Mm-hmm.
arrive at a deeper understanding of that experience, of how those dead bodies could actually be relatives or our loved ones or friends. And so we get to experience the Grenfell Tower in a new way, and we get to see the tragedy of loss. And and that sort of secondary reflection has been published in poetry collections, one of
Mm-hmm.
which won the T.S. Eliot Prize recently, right? So that's the Anima Methodi for you, and you can read more about it on the website of Desmond Con,
Thank
the
you.
co-creator.
I definitely look forward to doing that.
Yes,
I might even try a little bit of my own and see how that
great,
actually
great, Finbel.
goes.
Now, actually,
So
I'm doing. I may have told you that I'm writing a novella in verse,
yes, you did.
and so the primary form of one of the characters or the voices in that novella in verse, the form is the Anima Methodi.
Oh, great. Oh, wonderful. I look
Mm,
forward to that.
yes, thank
So
you.
going from having repetition and being, I guess, going inward, let's go outward a little bit, and let's talk about your one of your poems that you shared with me called "The Taikonaut's View of the Earth." I feel that this has something of a view of the main person speaking, looking over the entirety of the poem itself and the scenario in the poem. And I would like to actually just share a short verse from it and then talk about it a
Sure,
little bit. And then I would love for you to actually share this whole poem with us, if you would
wonderful.
please.
Yes.
So it
So yes, Finbel.
so what caught my eye was this verse in the first stanza. With eyes shut, I see my little girl jumping into bed, calling Papa. My wife beside her pointing at me, twinkling in the night sky. And then later in the poem, I raise a cup to my young family, their concerns invisible in the gems of the earth. And I know we kind of touched on this, and you gave me a little bit more of a background to it. And I had told you that I felt that this encompassed the experience of being away from loved ones and being more of a symbol to them, something that represented hope or even money or possibilities, as opposed to being a real person anymore.
Great. So that's a good interpretation, Finbel. Um, As you may know, I used to be a journalist. I was
Mhm,
working as a journalist in Taipei for over 3 years. And some of my work is based on material that I've come across in the course of work.
mhm.
And in 2011, when I wrote this poem, there was plenty of news about China's space program
Yeah.
and how they launched this first Chinese astronaut or taikonaut. After that would be spaceman in Chinese, right? And he said it's really about that. But um, on another level, the figurative level, which is a valid way of reading Finbel, it could be the taikonaut can be viewed as a symbol for um, the outsider.
Mm,
And we were talking about migrants as being outsiders par excellence in
mhm,
our time. And so that experience of the taikonaut viewing the world from outer space could be similar to that of the migrant worker. And there are many Filipinos from our home country in this space of
mhm.
migration who could probably relate to that same experience.
Yes,
And Finbel, I don't know if I could read that poem for you
absolutely. You
and your
go ahead
viewers.
and do so. Yes.
Yes,
We're going to have you read, if you can honor us with that, please. So go ahead
I
and read
think.
that for us.
Thank you very much. Let me just go to that window. This poem is from A World in Transit, which is going to have its 10th anniversary of publication this month, actually. Yes. This is a taikonaut's view of Earth. Earthlight rising with shadow patches, bird's nest stadium lights multiplied, dazzling as I cling to handlebars, my feet and dreams dangling in space. With eyes shut, I see my little girl jumping into bed, calling Papa, my wife beside her, pointing at me, twinkling in the night sky. Dark, quiet waters wash the earth, flushing out silt from sandy shores. A flag I wave does not flutter in space. Like my cheek planted on my love's navel, heaving softly with each breath. Both of us lie awake till dawn, chasing away doubts unresolved, before my rocket shoots through the firmament. The world is aglow with rocks, hemming in suit-dressed miners, forests laden with goods for sweatshops, treasures from the deep hauled by divers. I raise a cup to my young family, their concerns invisible in the gem of earth. My heart beats through a Teflon suit, roaring like a fire truck until my landing berth. So that's
Thank you for that.
the Taikonaut poem for you.
I enjoy the fact of there being um, contemplativeness, whimsy. It had a very ethereal feeling to it that I guess kind of belied the sadness that I felt underneath it. So thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. You
Thanks for listening to.
You're welcome. You mentioned in there, and I know I felt somewhere underlying with that poem, there was that theme that is very prevalent in your writings about the experience of being migrant, the experience of the diaspora. Um, and so I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about your thoughts on how our poetry right now, we as poets, are we being representative and are we shedding more light on our fellow Southeast Asian or poets who are not quite um, in the consciousness as much as, say, for example, Western poets.
All right. No, perhaps the the Asian migrant experience is not so much in the mainstream in the West, but here in Singapore, it is quite prominent,
Right?
especially in the light of the COVID pandemic. I don't know if you're aware of it, but the sector that has been most affected by this disease um, has been migrants.
Oh,
Not necessarily from Southeast Asia. These are foreign workers from India and Bangladesh
hmm,
um, who are working on a lot of construction sites that are building future skyscrapers in this very modern city.
I see. Okay.
And it just so happened that circumstances were such that they were living in very cramped living spaces. And so it was inevitable for this pandemic to actually affect them the most. And they have been quite active in the literary scene here. In fact, in today's newspaper, there's a feature on a Bangladeshi construction worker who published his own memoir. Okay, I haven't read the paper yet, but I know it because there was a blurb in yesterday's issue, um, and he's not the only foreign migrant worker who's been published. There have been several of them. It's
Hmm.
rather unusual, including at least two Filipino domestic workers. There have been other Bangladeshi poets who've published with my own publisher, Ethos Books, and some other mainstream ones. So this migrant experience is very much in the forefront of people's consciousness here because
That's good to
Singapore
hear.
is dependent on
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
and so just like the U.S., Singapore is a migrant society, um, and perhaps it's a fortunate thing that the voices of these previously marginalized group, their voices are being heard, and it's quite timely.
Yes.
So Asians have also been prominent in the States, maybe in other art forms, like in the movies. Um, and so that can be the start. And Ocean Vuong is very popular. So
Hmm.
his works kind of represent other other Asian or Asian American poets in the
Yes.
States. And I know there are other Asian American poets who are publishing about their experience, like you yourself. Um, so it's just a matter of um, I don't know, getting the proper agents,
I agree.
or having more friends in the media to have your voices heard, or to have something like this on YouTube. Now that we're more egalitarian and people's voices can be heard from anywhere in the world, and that's why we're here. So this
Yes.
is a very good platform to actually get Southeast Asian voices and those of migrants heard.
I do hope so because it is really up to us. Nobody else is going to speak in the voice that we want to be heard in, unless we do it ourselves. Change that
Yes.
perception
Mm,
for sure. Um, Speaking of voices, I want to go into your to another poem of yours. I believe this is called "A Filipino in Belo Woods."
yes,
And this did, I believe, speak of a Marine who was from the Philippines, if I'm correct,
that's right.
who was basically a nameless soldier. Um, so what impressed upon me with this poem was how it built the stanzas ascendingly, the lines in the stanzas ascendingly, that kind of appeared to me like it reminded me of a children's rhyme that had an additional line. But then again, the simplicity of that form um, was in contradiction to the deepness and the sadness of the subject of this marine going from being nameless to being remembered by the act of building him through the lines and letting us get to know him, get to know the struggles about the sakara. I believe is what you call the migrant workers, or the workers that were imported.
These are
Yeah,
farmers, like
farmers. Okay,
guest
yeah,
workers. Although they're not guest workers in the Philippines because they're also Filipino.
yes.
Yeah, so that's from the second collection, After the Fall, Dirt is Among Ruins, and that's part of my research on wars and conflicts. Because at the start of my PhD research, I wasn't quite sure what to focus on, and so I was reading a lot about wars. It started off the dissertation itself started off as a response to 9/11. Um,
Mm-hmm,
but then it kind of morphed into a reflection on Southeast Asians during World War II, and so this is one of those pieces that I wrote at the start of my research,
mm-hmm,
and yeah, so not too many people know that there were Filipinos and Indians who served in the wars. In both world wars,
mm-hmm.
and they figured quite prominently also in the landing at Normandy. So this is a creative retelling of that experience, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a melding of some details, including that of um, the singing of Silent Night on Christmas Eve by
Yes.
both the French and German forces um, at the height of the war, right? And since Filipinos love singing, or most Filipinos love to sing, so that I included that detail. And the form itself, yes, it's based on the children's rhyme form. Like this from the "This is the house that Jack built" type
Yes.
of of nursery rhyme. But I think I got the inspiration from Elizabeth Bishop in one of her poems for that. And yeah, so there's a retelling of that experience, and there's a building up of some details so that we know about that
Mm-hmm.
um, the poor Sakada who ended up dead in Normandy, and how um, perhaps the white government in the mother country during
Mm-hmm.
that time, that would be the colonial power of the U.S., was quite unaware of the sacrifices made by these brown um, citizens of
Yeah.
their territory. And you must be aware that in World War II, um, the parts of the U.S., if you can call it Commonwealth, that were affected most by the war, right,
Mm-hmm.
were not the mainland, but all the territories that it
Yes.
had in this part of the world, and they could actually make up quite a sizable part of that Commonwealth, because at that time the Philippines also had a very big population. Yeah, but it's not. It hasn't been quite recognized, and for a long time, many of the veterans did not get recompense um,
Oh,
for their contributions to the U.S. war efforts.
yeah. That.
But I know you're pressed for time, so your
No, this
viewers
is
can just read that.
completely fascinating, and
It's a very long poem.
yeah, I'm happy that you shared that, and you brought in that, very poignant connection about the singing of both troops of Silent Night, and
Yes,
incorporating the Filipino soldier in there. So yes, we
yes,
are coming upon time. Before we
yes.
leave, is there anything that you would like to share? Recent, current projects, any new things going on with you?
Yeah, so very soon, on May 23, will be the deadline for submission to a new anthology that Desmond Con and I are curating. This is entitled A Given Grace. I don't know if you're aware of it. Is the 500th anniversary of the establishment of Christianity in the Philippines,
Oh, okay.
and it's the 200th for the establishment of the Catholic Church in Singapore. It's
Goodness, so that,
coincidental. And
wow, yeah.
so Desmond Con, who's Singaporean, and I
Mhm.
have decided to compile Christian poems to honor both to honor both events. So you could check out um, Desmond Con's website, or you can go to Poetry Walls.
Mhm.
That's a Facebook group. There are posts there about that submission, and you're all invited as well to Singapore online when we celebrate poetry here at the Poetry Festival Singapore from July 30 to August 7. And some of you, I think Lacan will be part of it. And this will be streamed on the Facebook page of Poetry Festival Singapore. And Finn Bell mentioned that earlier. I happen to be one of the directors there. And we'll have varied fare. We'll have readings, panel discussions, and workshops in English, Tamil, Malay, and Chinese.
That sounds
These happen to be
exciting.
the languages here in Singapore.
Wonderful, beautiful. I look forward to it. I hope that I get an opportunity to participate. And I want to
Okay.
thank you so much, Eric, for being here with us, and giving of your time. We wish you so much positive energy on everything you have coming in the future.
Thank you very
Audience,
much, Finn Bell.
you're welcome. Audience, if you have any questions you'd like to ask of our guests, please do share them in the comments. And please don't forget to show us love here at the Poets Global Network. Subscribe, like, and share. We thank you for joining us here at the Poets Lighthouse. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Finn Bell.